Hey, can you guys hear me?
Um,
Can you?
yeah, I can.
Yes. Matt, how are you, man?
Greg, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Is this any better?
Let me see if I can figure out how to turn my volume up on the.
Am I okay for you, Matt, or am I broken up?
Yeah, you're fine.
Perfect. So I guess you didn't get to go see your son play yesterday at Delaware, huh?
Nah, the wrestle or wrestle, yeah, ref the
Yeah.
conferences. So yeah, I was a little tied up. I was just disappointed. I got a video though of some of the action. How'd he look?
I don't know. So I was kind of pissed off. I had a noon game at Temple, and then I was going to shoot down and do that, and then they moved the game at Temple to first 3:30 and then 2:30. So as soon as my game was over, I got in the car and I didn't stop till I got down here to Boone, North Carolina. Because I'm hoping we don't have school tomorrow. So that's it. Otherwise, I'll be driving back early in the morning.
Yeah,
We'll make it.
I think they've already called it actually. Oh no,
Yeah.
you're in Maryland, right?
Um, yeah, I'm in Maryland, and
I forgot.
forecast is a little less down there than it is here. Um, so let's see. I'm trying to get JP in here real quick before we get started.
Hey, Greg, I'm having a problem trying to figure out how to start the online course through USA Lacrosse.
All right. Um, if you can hang on for a minute when we're done, I'll show
Yeah,
you how that works.
I paid for the membership and everything, but I was talking to Clay about it, and he was like, his was like letting him click the links. Mine is just blue, and it's just telling me like the courses I should take.
All right. Let me, when we get done, I'll look at it real quick for you.
Okay. And when should we start ordering the apparel, like the shirts and stuff?
I would start now
Okay.
and use this code cadet K, or I'm sorry, K CADET when you go there, and that'll get you 10%.
Okay, just cadet, no capitals.
Cadet, no capitals.
All right. Um,
I'm gonna give Bennett another minute. Oh, here he comes. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. And we're going to start in just a second. As soon as he gets in here, he's joining. JP, unmute yourself and turn your video on.
Hey, how is everybody?
All right, so everybody, this is JP Bennett. He's our assigner. So he is primarily the one responsible for assigning games. Um, and he's a guy you want to be friends with. If you've done any kind of refereeing, you know how important that is to have a good relationship with your assigner. I'm constantly trying to repair mine, but we're getting there. Um, anyway, JP, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell them a little bit, and then we'll answer any questions.
Yeah, I've been assigning for DLOA for the last 10 or 12 years. Been with the association for 30 years. Biggest thing is just make sure your availability is up to date. Once Greg gets you through the class and you have all the skills you need, he'll go through one of the classes. I'm sure has gone through the Arbiter. If you're not familiar with it, the biggest thing is just making sure your availability is up to date. No, if you have a work commitment, a family commitment, that all comes first, but making sure your availability is up to date and understanding that you might need to travel just a little bit. I try and keep all the officials within 40 miles of their house, their homes, or the address that's identified in the arbiter. So when I'm going to assign a game, everybody comes up and it tells me how close they are to that, and it's your home address or whatever address you've identified as you will leave from. So if you put your work address in there, I'm going to keep you within 40 miles of work. Generally, for most guys, they're going about 20, 25 miles to get to the games. Other than that, just communication. You'll have my phone number. That's the best way to get hold of me, is to text, email,
Yeah.
and just open lines of communication.
So I'm putting his email and his phone number in the chat for you. Make sure you save those. And like JP said, in the beginning, the more flexible you can be with your time and your travel, probably the better off you're going to be. Just to kind of let everybody know. And we do kind of ask every guy in the membership, to take one or two longer trips out of their comfort zone a little bit during the year. It really helps. It helps in a couple ways. It helps. There's just some days where everything's down south or everything's up north. And we need to ask guys to come up.
I'm on my Zoom class.
Yep, thank you.
Is that you that just pulled in?
Let me mute Clay. He hadn't figured out Zoom yet. So there's mark him down. So, we may ask you to move a little bit, here and there. The other thing, it's good for our association because, especially when you get down south, there's a limited number of schools within, a decent radius. And by about the end of April, you start to get those calls from coaches like, "Hey, we're tired of seeing Greg Bulger. It just like him, love him to death. Does okay, but it's getting a little bit old." So it's always good to throw some fresh faces in there. It's also good for our consistency to have, a guy from up north go down south, or a guy from down south come up north. We try and prevent any of those kind of inconsistencies in our group and make sure when they see a referee from the DLOA that they can expect the same thing. The other thing with JP too is I'd recommend you put your home address in there. If you do have a work situation, we have had he's still with us. He's on our injured reserve list, hopefully slated to return, but he's in the National Guard. He lives in, I don't know, bumfuck somewhere, Delaware. I don't know the town, way down there. But 3 or 4 days a week, he's up at the Armory up in Newcastle. So he lets JP know what the schedules are and when he's going to be up there. And, it really helps with the signing, and it helps him to get games. So that's it for that. Anybody have any questions for JP?
Actually, I have a question. I have a question, Greg.
Go ahead, Matt.
Hey, JP, what kind
he
of...
was probably the guy, too, that your son was bitching about just from yesterday.
What's that?
He's probably the guy your son was bitching to you about, the one referee, the tall, goofy-looking one.
Was that at the independent conference?
No, at the club, Delaware club game yesterday.
Oh, you mean my son's the lacrosse
game? Story
yeah.
you told me about the guy who didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah, no, I haven't talked to him yet. He's so busy he doesn't return text and phone calls. But I will be speaking with him tonight actually to hear about the game. But you did the Delaware game yesterday, the club game?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, he just got on there. This is his first. Well, it's the second semester down there now. So quick question about availability. I'm pretty available, very available, but like if somebody that's totally available, I'm out every night with wrestling. I don't necessarily want to be out every night doing this. I want to do it, but more than once a week. But what in a perfect world, like how much if I just leave everything open,
Well,
how much
if
would
you only
you?
want 2 games a week, I'll give you 2 games a week. If you want 3 games, it's so starting out. We're going to start out at middle school games and lower level JV games. So if you just want to work 2 days a week, I'll put you to work just 2 days a week. If you decide you
Okay.
don't want to work at all one week, just block that entire week out, or call me and I'll say, how about if I leave you on for an emergency?
Yeah.
If you have open availability, you'll be an emergency guy probably. You'll be one of my first or second texts, hey, are you available? Can you get here? Things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm semi-retired. My kids are in college, so I have a lot of time on my hands. But 3 days a week would be great.
Yep.
Something like
Sounds
that.
good.
Not trying to dictate any terms. I'm
No,
just
no.
curious at what you
Yep.
need.
Yep.
Okay.
You got it. Sounds good.
All right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll be in
And,
touch. Thank you.
I got a question.
and
for
that's the
you.
best thing you can. Yeah, it's the best thing you can do is let him know, hey, I want to work 3 days a week, and then if he gives you more than that, just before you turn it back, I would email him or text him and just say, hey, I can only work this many days, and then he'll work it out. He may need you on the one day you think you're going to turn it back, and not really need you on another day. So he's pretty good to work with until you cross him.
Yeah,
Or you
I'm
make fun of
flexible,
him.
man. So I'm flexible and good. Thank you.
Excellent. Was there another question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I do.
Go for it.
So I heard you saying about the traveling for work and everything. I don't get done work till 3:30 or 4:30, and I could be working anywhere within the state. So how should I go about putting that in Arbiter, or should I just tell you on the week? Because right now,
Yeah. Just
for
let me
the
know during the week. Just leave everything open because again, you might, if you're down south and I need somebody, I might text you and say, hey, where are you today or where are you this week? And we can work it out. Just as long as we're just talking back and forth and communicating, we'll make it work.
yeah, okay, I'll definitely put that in I'll put it till 4 o'clock just to find the median, and then I'll let you know personally if I'm on that 4:10 schedule or 5/8.
Yep. Sounds good.
All right.
Yeah, I would and so just not to step on JP, but maybe once you know your schedule for the next week, let him know. He may already have games for you, and he could just switch guys around a little bit, or whatever. So that's a good one to just stay with good communication.
Okay.
All right. And JP, I want to talk to you about that thing in the Army game because I kind of felt like the guy ran in the crease. I didn't really see a push.
He got pushed from behind.
Did he?
His hands were on his back. Yeah, his hands were on his back. He got pushed.
Yeah.
I think he did.
I mean, well, it was probably good because otherwise they would have to take the goal off.
Yep.
But the other one was horrendous.
That was bad. It was real bad.
Yep.
Yep.
All right,
All right,
brother.
boys. Good luck.
We're
Talk soon.
gonna move on here and get through this. So, all right. I apologize for canceling last week. Kind of at a point right now, but overloaded myself a little bit and I don't know if I told you, my wife and I purchased a cabin down here in the mountains in North Carolina to be kind of be closer to her son and their babies, and just also a little bit of an investment for us. But the property's been a little bit more work than we thought, and I just kind of was overdoing it, and I just wasn't prepared last week, so I didn't want to give you guys a half a class, so now you get a double class. But anyway, so today we're going to talk about technical fouls. At any point, if you have a question, if you've seen anything on TV, we're now into really kind of the third week of the season. If you have ESPN Plus, there's tons of games on there. Many of the smaller colleges, if you go onto their lacrosse page, Salisbury, Washington College, they actually have they stream their games, and they'll have a link. You can watch it afterwards. It's a good way to kind of watch what the referees are doing. Learn a little bit, put some questions up in your mind. Kind of what I was talking to JP as we were sharing back and forth a couple things from the Delaware game. Kind of a mechanical problem that the guy had where the wrong guy threw the flag and probably messed some things up. we talk about them. So it's good to watch the games and just ask yourself questions. What are they calling? What are they not calling? And you can always bring those back to me or text me. Those. So technical fouls. This is Rule 6. So we're going to go to Rule 6, and then we'll back up after that to Rule 5. So Rule 6 are technical fouls. So these are not safety fouls. They're just many times just bad lacrosse, or things that happen that create an advantage that shouldn't be there. So that's where we start with this thing, and I don't know how to pronounce that, TPOD, but we call it the principle of advantage and disadvantage. So when you see different fouls, sometimes you'll see what you think is an obvious push or a hold, and people are screaming, he was held, and there's no call. And that's because maybe he really wasn't disadvantaged, or he didn't gain an offensive advantage by what happened, and you just wash it out and let him play. So part of becoming a good lacrosse referee is understanding, when there's a true advantage or when there's a true disadvantage, and calling that. And that does change depending on the level you're in and the temperature of the game. Sometimes you might not call a certain push in a game, because the guy doesn't lose the ball. He's just kind of pushed, forward a little bit. But you might be at a point in that game where the temperature is really high, it's getting hot. And if you don't call that, the guy's probably going to turn around and do something stupid. We want to avoid that. So we want to let him play, but we also use these little technical fouls to keep the temperature in the right spot. Some of these technical fouls you have to call, and these are things that usually involve a line. So things like offsides or crease violations. So technical fouls. Okay, you have motion fouls. Like I said, they're kind of line fouls, offsides, crease violations, things that are an illegal procedure, and then illegal screens and warding off. They all happen kind of in the motion of the game. It's not really illegal contact or anything, but it's still a technical foul. And then illegal contact. So in lacrosse, there are legal holds. Okay. I'm sure in your first 4 or 5 games, you'll see a great stick hold. So within 5 yards of a ball, or if a guy has possession of the ball, you can hold your stick on his stick away from the body, pin it to the ground, except in the face-off, and restrict his movement stick on stick. You can't do it stick on body or with your arm or something like that. So there is legal holding. There's legal pushing. You can push a guy from the front and from the side. Can't push him from the back. And then you also have some fouls that are game management. So we have a couple, and when we get to conduct fouls, they're kind of, to me, it's a cool tool that in a lot of games you referee, a lot of other sports, you don't really have these little technical fouls that are, I call them just kind of a super warning. Like just I've had enough. You're going to stop, and we're going to move on. And I'll explain how that all works. And then the other one is stalling. We don't hear about it quite as much anymore because you can't stall there's no stalling in college lacrosse because of the shot clock. We still could have issues in high school lacrosse, and we'll cover that and go through that. So motion fouls. We talked in Rule 4 about offsides. You can have 6 offensive players and 7 defensive players, including the goalie, in the zone with the ball at one time. So if you have more than that number, you would have offsides. Okay, and again, there's not always going to be advantage. A guy steps off the line, or he's running over, plays all the way down right around the goal. He realizes, he runs back. Problem is, everybody saw it, so you can't really pass on it. It's not really a judgment call at that point. It's pretty simple. They had the wrong number. And then we'll talk when we get into counting offsides. But generally, the guy following the play in a 2-man crew has responsibility for counting those players. And generally, if you know the game a little bit or as you learn it, we always count the offense first, and they already have 3 attackmen down there. So you just count, one guy went across, 2 guys went across, 3 guys. Oh shit, 4 guys went across, and you got to watch it and you'll learn. And then you always kind of just recount and make sure somebody didn't sneak in or you missed a count, something like that. So that is offsides. So here's kind of an example of what an offsides looks like. All right, just a picture. So we're counting. Oh, that's a terrible example because the video's not playing. All right, for some reason my videos aren't playing. Give me 1 second. Oh, son of a bitch. Mm-mm-mm. You all can see my screen, right? I'm not just talking. I apologize. I don't think somehow the videos didn't carry over. Yeah. So the videos didn't carry over. So at some point, I will give you an example, or I'll find the videos and send them to you, so you can see them. But basically, this is an example where there wouldn't be offsides. The 7th guy would be over here. What's going to happen here is you see this guy check, then the guy's going to run by this guy, and he's going to check him, and he's going to step over the line as he's checking him. So those are offsides. So I'll get those videos to you. I apologize. Crease violation. So in Rule 4, we spoke about the crease, the area around the crease that is there to protect, kind of as a protection for the goalie. Offensive player can never go in a crease, but it's not, and a guy stepping on the crease line is not always an advantage, but you have to call it because it is a line violation. Okay. And then we can also we'll talk about play-ons at the end of this. So if a guy steps into the crease before the ball crosses the goal line, that's a crease violation. Okay, only offensive players. If they're running, we call it the goal and stroll. So they're running towards the goal, they shoot, the ball crosses the line, and they step in the crease. That's fine. Not sure if this isn't gonna talk about it. So you see this guy has left his feet. All right. The difference here is if he lands anywhere in the crease or ends up in the crease before he completely stops, okay, even if the ball went in the goal first, it is still a crease violation. So if you leave your feet on your own and you end up in the crease, that's always going to be no goal, regardless of when you landed in there. All right. Illegal procedure. This is kind of a category, and if you go through the book, you'll see it's a very long thing. It covers a whole lot of different little technical rules. Some of them having to do with not being ready to play. Some of them have to do with losing your equipment. I'm going to talk about a couple of them. When you do have a legal procedure, you at least want to explain what happened. Sometimes if you just go illegal procedure and nobody knows what happened. So, legal procedure, he's playing without his stick. Illegal procedure, you have too many long poles on the field. Illegal procedure, delay a game, which is actually that. So that's what you have to do. You explain, you tell them what it was, and then we want to get play started. It's a technical foul. We don't want it to hold up flow of the game, we can always go over to the coach later and explain what it was. All right. A big one is delay a game. There's a couple things that make up delay a game. One is once you award the ball for possession, let's say a loose ball foul or an offensive foul, and you award the ball, the team has 5 seconds to pick up the ball and be ready. And again, you'll see you'll be tested for tolerance level. We don't always call that one right away, but we do if it's ridiculous or happening a lot, we'll start kind of counting slowly, and that gets them moving. Another delay is offensive guy has the ball. We had an illegal pick. He has to just drop the ball on the ground because the other team, so let's say the blue team was called for an illegal pick. The white team is entitled to the ball and a quick restart. If the blue guy was to roll the ball away from him, okay, or make it in any way that he can't pick up the ball and be ready to start, that's a delay of game. That's going to be a technical foul. Okay. And then the other is once we have a goal, they have 20 seconds from the time we are ready to play to have all their players out. They have 20 seconds at the end of a timeout to get everybody ready. Okay. Again, we rarely call those, but if we have to, we keep them moving. And if you are going to call it, we always want to call those very early. We don't want them to impact the game. So if a team is particularly slow coming out after a face-off, or often sometimes what will happen is the defense is getting the ball after a shot, and all of a sudden they sub and try to run a midi 50 yards down to pick up the ball. Okay. It takes a long time for them to do that. At some point, you got to kind of tell them that's not what we're doing today unless that guy can run, a 4.240 and get down there. So mouthpieces, and you'll hear a lot about this. This is a huge bone of contention. They're required to wear a mouthpiece. It's very, very hard to enforce because it's a motion game. Guys are moving. Sometimes, like I guess with football, you can kind of look when everybody's, before the play starts and they should have their mouthpiece in. Mouthpieces fall out. A lot of stuff can happen. My other thing about calling the mouthpieces, and it's maybe a little controversial, is these guys practice, 2 to 3 hours a day, 4 days a week. And I guarantee you in 90% of the cases, there's not a mouthpiece anywhere near the field, or it's on, stuck in their helmet or dangling from their face mask, and nobody's telling them to do it. We have to come in and be the bad guy. When you do certify the coach at the beginning of the game and you tell them, you certify everybody's properly equipped, that's kind of your catch-all. I like to see a couple warnings for mouthpieces. And then if you're really having a problem with it, or somebody on your crew is a stickler for it, call the foul. It's basically just a turnover, and let everybody know you're going to call it that day, and generally you'll get them to comply. All right, illegal screens. This is another one you hear all the time. They're called a moving pick. Nowhere in the rule book does it call them a moving pick. It's an illegal screen. So when you set a screen in lacrosse, your feet have to be straight under your shoulders. Your stick has to be completely inside the frame of your body. You have to be stationary. Okay. You can't move into the guy. You can't move your feet. You can't lean into him. Anything like that. Again, this is also the two things with this. First of all, to be an illegal screen, there has to be contact. And you really kind of have to see that the guy was really picked off. Like there was a huge, a significant disadvantage to the guy getting picked, because you got to remember both guys are moving, and all that. So, again, you want to set the tone early if you're going to call a lot of screens, or if teams today do a lot of movement inside with screens. Don't sit there and wait till the fourth quarter and decide, okay, I'm tired of watching these little bit of movement and whatnot. I'm going to right now, I'm going to call it. So, um, so that's that. The other, let's see if this one works. Nope. I'll send all these videos to you. I'll send you examples this week. The other thing that is similar to a legal screen is interference. So remember, you can't body check a guy. You can't push a guy, legally hold him more than 5 yards from a loose ball. Also, often, if a guy is trying to run off the field, the guy's running on, you can't make contact with him or disadvantage him. That's interference. All right, holding. And here's where in technical fouls we get into how we adjudicate them a little bit. If a player is in possession of the ball, okay, it's going to be an advantage or disadvantage. So if you look at the picture, the long pole right there, he's probably holding the guy a little bit, okay? But if this guy isn't straight up going to goal, okay, he's kind of curling around and he's not really in a position in a play to score, to feed, and the defenseman lets up on it, you might pass because it keeps the flow going. There was no real advantage. All right. But if a guy's running straight at the goal and he's held like this and, you actually see him restricted, okay, then you're probably going to call the hold. If in this case, the attackman is stronger than the defenseman, you always hear the weight room thing and he kind of pushes through the hold and continues on, you might pass on it. So that's that. If you have a technical foul, a hold, and the offense is in possession of the ball, we're going to throw a flag. We're going to let play continue. Okay. And then when play's over, we're going to adjudicate the foul. If it happens on a loose ball, okay, it's simply possession to the team that was offended. So you're just going to either do a play on, and we'll talk about that, or you're going to blow your whistle. You're going to give the ball to the team that should get the ball. And then when they're ready to restart, we're going to start. Okay. Level of play matters. Okay. At younger levels, there's, we're going to call it probably more. At levels where you don't have really skilled players or you have high emotion, we might start calling these a little bit tighter to manage the game. Because my philosophy is always, at times, players will look at it. If you're not making a call, if you're not taking care of the problems, all of a sudden they feel empowered to take care of themselves. And that's never a good thing. So context matters. So, like I said, is it stick on stick? Is it stick on body? Did he have stick on stick and then it slid to his body for a second and then came off? How much contact do you have? How much pressure do you have? And we will, we'll talk more, and you'll see more examples of that. And it's just a good thing to watch how things go. Often when you have a scrum for a ground ball, it's going to look like you got 50 pushes. But until a guy is pushed to the ground or a guy is pushed over the ball and it's clear he's pushed, you might pass on it. One of my things, and one of the plays I was talking to JP about, what I look for on a push is like an unnatural acceleration. So did the player, like in the case here, the white player, he's got his hand on his back, and then does the black player move forward faster than he should? His feet are off the ground right now. All of a sudden he jerks forward. He has nothing that would push him forward. Well, you got to push. Okay. Same as with the holds. All right. We're looking for that advantage, disadvantage. As long as a player isn't prevented from scoring or creating a scoring opportunity, we might pass, and a no call sometimes is your best option. Sometimes we call those 50-50s. We could call it, we couldn't call it. I like to, I like to stay on the pass side of the 50-50 if I can. All right. Um, Everything else is kind of the same, but remember, like I said, front or side is legal. Okay, so it's as long as you're within 5 yards of a loose ball, and you push a guy from the front or from the side. Okay, and it's a safe, just a push. It's a legal push, and you might hear a coach scream, especially when they're hit on the side or they're turning. It was a push. It was a push. Coach, no, it wasn't a push. It was legal. The other thing with the pushing rule is if I start a push from the side and I'm pushing you from the side and you turn away and I end up on your back, we're going with the fact you started the contact on the side of the body. So a guy can't turn to create the foul. Does that make sense? I hope. All right. And again, my videos are crap. All right. Interference. We talked about this. This is outside of not counting goalkeeper interference. Okay. You can't interfere with the player's free movement. So sometimes you'll see it on a clear. Sometimes you'll see it in front of the goal. You'll have a defender kind of holding a guy up from cutting or moving to set a pick or something like that. They happen off ball, and often off ball more than 5 yards from a loose ball. If it's happening in front of the crease, often we're gonna warn them. We're gonna say let them move, let them move. If the interference, the lack of free movement causes the guy to fall down, or drop his stick, or something happens, then you kind of got to call it. Okay. Offense, generally, if there's possession, it's going to be a turnover. If it's a loose ball, it's just going to be awarding it to the other team. If it happens, by the defense and there's possession, okay, that's going to be a flag down. All right. I said we have some game management fouls, right? So, everybody likes to bitch, everybody likes to gripe, everybody, coaches have this tendency to feel, and to some degree they're right. They need to protect what's happening to their players in the field. If they feel you missed something or they feel you didn't, that they were disadvantaged and you didn't call it, they might say something. How they say it, how often they say it, what they say depends on what you do. If they just tell you, hey, I thought they had a push, that was a push, or they're yelling, and they yell it out a couple times and then stop, generally we want to just ignore those. If they're on the field, they're jumping up and down, they won't stop. We're going to try to tell them. We use a thing called a ladder. We try and work them up a ladder. Coach, stop. I understand you're frustrated. This is what we had. If he continues, we have this thing called a conduct foul. And we use it to get the coaches and players under control. Okay. It can be called on a coach. It can be called on a player. It can be called on the bench. Okay. Generally, I like to call conduct fouls on coaches. Okay. Players don't always understand a conduct foul. And we can't call any conduct fouls or anything on fans. So you can't penalize the team because the parents are assholes. Okay. And we'll talk in later in foul recognition or penalty adjudication things, how that works and how we handle bad fan interactions. Like I said, this is the first level before you move to unsportsmanlike conduct. And if early in a game, a guy complains a little bit and your partner calls a conduct foul on him, and then later the other coach, does something similar that rises to the same occurrence, we're going to go ahead and make sure we call it on them. We always want to make sure that we're consistent. Okay. Conduct fouls are for chronic complaining. They're for being loud, yelling at you across the field repeatedly, things like that. They're not for anything where they question your integrity, they question your manhood, they use foul language, vulgar language, anything like this. This is simply bitching and complaining that's gone too far. Okay. Any questions there? All right. So stalling. There's a couple of things. Okay. The stalling rule is twofold. You have stalling for the first 46 minutes of the game. Okay. And basically, stalling is a team not attacking the goal. Okay. They're not working an offense to attack the goal. They're using large chunks of time without actually trying to score. And remember, the goal is always to try to score. Okay. Um, and, sometimes you got to look at the score differential. Sometimes you have to look at the type of defense the team is playing. Often, if a team, is played man to man, and all of a sudden in the fourth quarter, they come out in a zone and teams, they get out of rhythm and they don't know how to attack the zone, or they have a hard time because the zone is very good. You don't want to necessarily penalize the offensive team because they're trying to attack the zone, and they shouldn't be required to throw a bad pass or dodge into a zone that's just going to end up in failure. So it's very subjective. I generally like to look for um, a change in the way a team runs their offense. So if early in the game the team, they get the ball down into their zone, they get their substitutions in, they immediately go into a play, bing, 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 they score, they're very high tempo and fast. All of a sudden in the fourth quarter, they've got a 3 or 4 goal lead, and that tempo changes, but the defense is still playing man to man and everything's the same. Well, that's going to probably tell me they're probably trying to stall. I'm going to try to get them moving again. Okay. If they start off the game very, very deliberate, all right, and it's not, just holding the ball for 2 minutes, but, they're moving the ball around and kind of waiting for their opportunity and doing a lot of movement inside, you're going to let that go. And as long as that's their MO for the whole game, you're going to be fine with that. Now, in the last 2 minutes in high school, if you have a goal differential of 4 goals or less, okay, you have to call stalling. And what we do, the way we deal with stalling is we put our hands up and we tell them to keep it in the box. So if they're already inside the box, all right, they can't come out of the box. That box that goes about to the 30-yard line and goes to about 10 yards from each side of the field all the way to the end line. They have to keep the ball in that box. If it goes out of the box because of their action, okay, it's a technical foul. It's going to be a turnover, and you give the ball to the other team. If the other team causes it to go out, i.e., they're the last ones to touch it. So if there's a pass and a guy goes to hit the pass and a defensive player hits the ball, it goes out of the box, that's not going to be a violation of stalling. If there's a ball, the ball becomes loose in the box and a defensive player flings it out of the box for whatever reason, and they were the last ones to touch it, it is no longer, it's not a violation. In both of those cases, if the offense gets it, they now have 10 seconds to get the ball back in the box, and then they have to keep it in the box. Does that make sense? Okay. For that, I do recommend that you you go through that section of the rule book, technical fouls, and read up on all of them. But just always remember that it is a, uh, advantage, disadvantage type of thing. Okay. So, are there any questions about technical fouls? Give me a second. So, if we have better luck with the personal fouls. All right, everybody should see the PowerPoint officials education rule 5 personal fouls, right? We good? Can you guys see that?
Yep.
All right, so personal fouls are the big safety fouls. Okay. This is, as I said at the beginning of the class, our job as a referee is to keep the game safe, fair, and fun. And it's, they all work together, but safety is always first. Okay. No kid, no player should ever, have something negative happen to them, as a result of playing the game. It's a physical sport. We allow contact. Okay. It's not a collision sport. Okay. And that contact, there's very specific rules about what that contact can be. So let's look at what the rule book says. Rule 5, Section 1. Personal fouls are those of a serious nature. Illegal body checking, slashing, cross checking, tripping, unnecessary roughness, unsportsmanlike conduct. And then now we have checks involving the head or neck and the use of illegal cross or other illegal equipment. All right, so let's talk about them. So if we consider our technical fouls our misdemeanors, our minor fouls, okay, and often, if you commit something that's close to a misdemeanor, the officer may give you a break, give you a warning. Judge what really happened, it was a result of what you did. But our personal fouls are felonies. There's no advantage, disadvantage. You have to call these fouls. Okay. And they kind of make that little Venn diagram of illegal conduct, illegal contact, and illegal equipment. And they all cross into the same area. In the middle of that area is your ability to control the game. So if you don't call these fouls, the game gets out of control. It becomes unsafe, and this is where people start to really question your credibility. There's still judgment calls, but generally they're a little more obvious sometimes than a technical foul. So the personal fouls are cross checks, illegal body checks, checks that involve the head or the neck, body checks. Body checking a defenseless player, slashing, tripping, and then unnecessary roughness. And when, again, read through the rule book and look at what the language says about each rule. There's very specific language about each rule, and kind of get very used to that language, because when you're explaining a foul, especially a personal foul, you want to use the right terminology, use the same terminology that the rule book uses. That gives you a lot more credibility. So cross-check is, and there's several components to it. So it's hitting a player with the part of the cross that are between your hands, okay? It can be very wide, it can be like this, but it has to be entirely between your hands. Sometimes you'll see a guy go to body check and he'll hit him with the top. He'll have his hands apart, but the top hand or the bottom hand hits him. Well, that's not going to be a cross check. It could be something else, or it could be legal, but it's not going to be a cross check. Okay. And there's two kind of ways. All right. So the stick has to be out. So either it's a thrust. Okay. So you're actually taking the space between the shaft of your stick and the player, and you're thrusting your stick into them. Okay. Or you have your arms already out extended, and then, the player, you're running at the player runs into your stick. Those are going to be a cross check. Okay. There is a thing, and it's legal, called a cross check hold. All right. And basically what happens is when an attackman, particularly is playing against a long pole, but even a shorty, the player, is playing with his hands apart. Okay. And he's approaching the attackman, but his stick is still at his body. When they come in contact, you can take your stick and you can, you can hold him and you can push out a little bit as long as there's no space. You can't take the guy and redirect him, but you can use that to hold the guy, kind of suck him in and run, and get him to go in an opposite direction. That's not a cross check. So cross check has to have that thrust or the arms start extended and you have separation. Okay. These videos are going to work. Okay, did everybody see that? He runs at the player. So this guy here, 10, goes at him. All right, he's got his hands apart and his motion runs right into him. That's an easy cross check. All right. I do want to make one comment. So the referee's very good at, this is a transition play, and he's very quickly throwing his flag. When you have a hit like that, all right, it's best throw your flag. If you're going to kill play right away, or it looks like they're coming together, run in there. Use your stripes to try to diffuse the situation. All right. You don't want to grab players and all that, but often just getting in there, blowing your whistle and letting them know you're there is good. This guy kind of stops, and then he looks angry making, getting the guy out of there. And that's something, I don't like that look. So. All right. So you got the foul right. I just don't like the look of what he's doing. Go over there, make sure everything's calm, say you're going to go for the cross check, and then, you're going to relay it to your partner. All right. So illegal body checks. All right. You can't body check a player more than 5 yards from a loose ball. Okay. So if you have a body check, even if everything else about it is legal, but it's more than 5 yards from a loose ball, okay, that's going to be an illegal body check. Can't be directly from the rear or below the waist. Okay. Now remember what I said though. If it starts out legal in the front and ends up in the back, that's not going to be an illegal body check. Okay. You can never hit a player that's on the ground. So if he has anything more than his 2 feet on the ground, okay, he's on his knees, he's falling on the ground, you cannot body check that player. Okay. And illegal body checks, I mean, they're a 1 minute penalty. Okay. So the run of the mill illegal body check is always going to be a 1 minute penalty. And we'll get into some illegal body checks that, we're going to up that penalty time, but just an illegal body check is going to be a minute. Okay. One category of illegal body checks and cross checks are checks that involve the neck or the head. Okay. Those fouls are either 1, 2, or 3 minutes, non-releasable, depending on the severity of it. And players can be ejected for hitting players in the head or neck, depending on what they are. So these are all the different kind of categories we use. Okay. So we can kind of start here. All right. So yeah, the check starts legal, but somehow the follow through ends up in the head or the neck. Okay. So we're going to give them 1 minute, but that's going to be a non-releasable foul. So most penalties are releasable, which means if the player who committed the penalty is still in the box and a goal is scored by the offense, then we're going to release that penalty. These are in a category where they're non-releasable. Okay. If you have direct contact to the head, okay, that's going to be 2 minutes. If it's targeting, okay, where the only intent was to hit the guy or hit him in the head, and they hit, you come across with a cross check or a body check in the head. Um, those are generally going to be 3 minutes. If you're going to use the word targeting, okay, those are going to be generally 3 minutes. And I think our group, we would like, if you're going to give a guy 3 minutes, you should probably, those are generally reserved for ejection fouls. Okay. We'll talk in foul adjudication and penalty. In Rule 7, we'll talk a little bit about some tricks you can use with that 3 minute penalty to maybe not eject a player, but to get him off the field. But we'll save that. These are only cross checks and illegal body checks and an uncontrolled slash. Okay. So it's a misnomer. All right. A lot of times a guy will swing at the stick, and yet something happens and you get a hard check to the head with the stick. Okay. That's not necessarily going to put the guy in the box for multiple minutes and make it non-releasable. Okay. You'll have a lot of slashes to the head that are still just 1 minute penalties. But if the guy winds up, he's baseball batting the guy. If he does it intentionally, you should eject him immediately. Okay. The one thing we can't do is call this foul unnecessary roughness. And we'll talk about unnecessary roughness in a minute. But this is not unnecessary roughness. This is an illegal body check or it's a cross check. All right. So here's going to be kind of a slower look of it. Okay. So that was legal when the guy, he turned and dipped. All right. It became illegal. Okay. And that's going to be, as it said, let me go back for a minute. So this statement, FDSW is flag down, slow whistle. So we're going to throw our flag, but because there's possession, we're going to let the play continue. Okay. So, and then we're going to adjudicate the foul. All right. So we're going to look at this from a different perspective in a second. So this is from one side. This is going to be from where the referee actually should be standing. Okay. Now that's going to be what do you think you're going to call that? Well, it just told you. Okay, so that's going to be a cross check because it was a cross check when he hit him in the back, rode up, hit him in the head. Okay. Sometimes you'll see where you have a good legal check and the guy dips and turns and you'll get some contact with the head. You don't always have to call that unless there's force to the head. Okay. All right, let's move on. Here's this a little bit more live action. Okay. Let's look at it one more time. So he's got his arms out. He runs across the field and he slaps the guy right across the head. Okay. Yeah. Now, he's a nice guy. He let him up. So this is probably going to just be a 2-minute foul. This is just overly aggressive play. There's no maliciousness to it. I don't think he really meant to hit him in the head. He slid a little bit late. He thought the guy, he's late and he caught him in the head. So we're gonna call that 2 minutes and we're gonna lock him in. Okay. And we're gonna thank him for being a nice guy and showing good sportsmanship and letting the guy out. Any questions? All right, next one. All right, defenseless player. And this is the same type of category as hits to the head or the neck. And this is exclusively in high school lacrosse. So there's no defenseless player rule in college lacrosse. And if you're doing games in the summer with college rules, you don't necessarily want to use defenseless players as the reason you put a guy in the box. It might be, but you don't want to say that, okay? Because it's not in the rule book. Defenseless player is not in the rule book. It's hitting a guy from the blind side with or without possession. It's when a guy has his head down to pick up a loose ball. It could be a guy looking to receive a pass, and so he looks back to catch the pass. As soon as he starts to turn, you hit him, and that is a defenseless player, and that's going to be a 2 or 3 minute penalty depending on the severity of it. There is no one player option for a defenseless player. Okay. So again, let me go back. So you can't dial this down if you use the word defenseless. All right. So here's a defenseless player video. All right, that's good because we have the two angles. And I'm not sure he hit him in the head. There might have been some helmet to helmet contact, but clearly, even by the way that the foul ends, he clearly he meant to hit him. All right. Is there anybody who would allow that guy to stay in the game? Do you think a guy like that should be allowed to stay in the game? Okay. That's one that I would want to see an ejection. He obviously came running out of the box with one thing in mind, and that was just to hammer that guy. All right. And again, on those fouls too, when you see those big hits, get yourself moving and get in there, because usually you can see, there's going to be some kind of retribution. There's going to be a lot of jawing and talking and guys going, and you want to get in there and separate it and prevent it from escalating. Targeting, again, blind side without possession, head down on a loose ball. And if it's targeting, so this is right to the head, clearly, so the defensive player doesn't have to be to the head. It could just be a big hit where the guy didn't see it coming. And those can be just as dangerous for concussions because it creates that quick head jerk and movement. He has no opportunity to defend himself. Targeting is straight to the head. It can be blindside. It doesn't have to be. But if you just light up a guy, that's a 3 minute non-releasable foul. And again, I would want to see those guys generally ejected. So this is a tough one, but it's pretty clear the guy had one thing in mind. It was a blindside hit. He just wanted to crush the guy. And the fact that, it was right at the end of a quarter, he goes after him. I don't know if that guy would be ejected, but we should certainly talk about it. So that's our targeting foul. All right. Any questions on the illegal body checks, the targeting, any of that stuff? All right. We can talk, we can look at videos. The big thing is just seeing it happen. These penalties for targeting defensive players.
I'm sorry, Greg. I was trying to get off mute. So in that
And
last video, so that guy was running freely down the field towards the goal, looking to catch a pass. What should the defenseman have done in that situation?
certainly not come up high and hit him in the head.
Oh, he hit. Oh,
And
yeah, I didn't see him hit him in the head.
yeah, yeah.
I thought it.
And
I thought it was more of a body to body check. Okay.
no, he does get up high and he's running. He's also running towards him, you know. And that's a tough one. And that's a question you're going to hear all the time. Um, and that one, I'll be honest, I'm not sure that's the best example of a targeting foul because it's also the end of the period and there's a lot going on. Um, and he's a big, strong guy. I think I would go more with a defenseless player or something like that and keep it down at 2 minutes, but
Okay.
lock him in. But those are, it's tough because what I was getting at is they've added these rules in the last 5 years, and it's to protect players, and it's also to promote our game. So one of the big promotions for our game, where you're seeing, all the stuff in football, that CTE and head trauma and all these kind of things. And it has attracted people to lacrosse, because of, you can still have some physical contact, but it's not football. Our equipment's not designed in the same way. It's not designed, like I said, to be a collision sport or anything like that. So, those kind of hits that, when you and I played, probably when I played, that was like, that was expected. If that defenseman didn't do that, he was going to catch it when he walked over there at halftime. But you just
Yeah.
can't do that
Okay.
anymore because we know so much. So it's a tough question. It's an argument you're going to have a lot, but we're just trying to get those big hits out of the game. And my argument is always, it's not, he created the collision, so.
All right.
All
Thank you.
right. Yep. All right. Slashing. All right. Swinging with viciousness and reckless abandon. And again, this is right out of the rule book. So when you call a guy for slashing and the coach asks, well, what did he do? Don't just say, well, he hit him too hard because he's allowed to hit him, right? And too hard is very subjective. But if you say it was a very vicious hit, um, it was reckless abandon. And some things that'll bring on reckless abandon is it like look at the position of that player. That's not any kind of lacrosse move, being down at the end of the stick like that and just swinging it. Okay, and those are going to be kind of your definitions. Okay, you're striking an opponent in the head, the back, or the leg. All right, so you're allowed to check them on the stick. You're allowed to check them on the gloves. We will sometimes uh, give them maybe, if it's not too vicious, a whack on the arm, um, depending on the game. But anything to the head, the back, the legs, the upper arms is going to be a slash. Okay, so let's look at one. Okay. Okay, I'll look at it one more time. So the first one, he's swinging, and at that point, I'm going to tell him, under control, get to the stick, something like that. But when the guy turns and he comes, straight into his back, that's the first slash. And then he just gets his money worth. Okay, so here's another one. And that's like my favorite flag throw. So watch it again. Okay, so that riding attackman, uh, definitely beat, and he just, he tries to take full advantage of it. Okay. And he gets nothing. All right. So, that's when you want to call. And if you call that, call it early and we'll get it out of the way. Okay. Um, Again, remember, slashing to the head is not necessarily going to bring on a non releasable foul. If it's intentional, if it's out of the context of the play. So you're allowed to swing your stick in an attempt to dislodge the ball, okay, or to disrupt the player's momentum, okay. If the swing of the stick is not to do one of those two things and it hits him in the head, then you're probably going to want to think about locking the guy in, okay. Tripping. And this is another interesting one. So it's obstructing below the waist with a positive primary action. So that's important, and that's the term you want to use when you call a trip, because sometimes what looks like a trip to everybody else is a hold, and it can be with the stick, it can be with the leg. Okay, so something below the waist. It does not have to be intentional. Most of them aren't. All right. And it usually happens after a missed check and the follow through. So, guy goes to try and check. He hits nothing. He catches his leg, his opponent's leg, ankle, and the guy goes flying. That's going to be a trip. I generally won't call the trip if he gets the check. So the positive primary action is the check. If he makes a good check, but then it slips off and he puts him on the ground, I'm generally going to call that a hold. Okay. So it has to be the initial action that causes that trip. All right. Also happens when feet get tangled. So generally, guys running across to catch a guy on a fast break, and he gets into him, and their legs get tangled and cause him to trip. We're going to call that a trip. And the reason we call it a trip is because that kind of action can hurt a player. All right. Um, and you always want to kind of ask yourself on some of these, would you have gone down without the help? So sometimes, you'll see a guy stumbling, like I said, you have a real good check, and that check pulls the guy forward. He's stumbling and falling, and in the momentum, the physics of it, they end up tangled up. I may pass on that, because the check was so good, he was going. All right. Um, so, those are questions you ask yourself. Oftentimes, sometimes you'll have that good check and then you'll call it a push or you'll call it a hold and you'll just give the ball back to him. Um, but every time a guy falls down, it does not have to be a trip. The first one is kind of okay, right? It's a good check. But then he comes again, he doesn't get any stick, and he brings him down. All right, unnecessary roughness. And this is what I said. We want to be careful when we call this because there's some very specific definitions to unnecessary roughness. It's excessively violent holding and pushing infractions. Okay. Defensive player, violent contact with a screening opponent. So offensive player sets a screen, sets a pick, and the defensive player just unloads on him. He comes through, he just drops his shoulder and he sends him reeling. That tells you it was a good pick. And this guy, he was picked off, he was out of the play, and he was gonna take advantage of that and take care of that guy. It does, if they have contact and the guy falls down, that's not unnecessary, but you can kind of see it if you're in the right position. He drops his shoulder or he checks him and follows through. That's going to be unnecessary roughness. Um, Excessively violent holding and pushing. Um, Infractions are things like late hits. Um, it's kind of the term unnecessary is often your definition. He didn't have to do it. All right. It was avoidable, deliberate, violent contact. Everything about it might have been legal, other than he didn't have to do that. He could have made another choice. All right. And then punching blows. So punching blow is you're going after the guy with a check instead of pushing your hands into him and let your body do the follow through. You come through and you punch. Okay. That's unnecessary roughness. It's very dangerous. So here's a late hit. Okay. I mean, everything about the hit is legal. You know, he hits him right in the side, but the ball was already in the back of the net. You know, he could have pulled up, he could have avoided hitting him. He chose not to. Well, this is the running through a pick.
In this clip, White is on offense, and there is a pick set behind the goal. Watch in slow motion and notice the defender's helmet looks to see the pick, and then he intentionally body checks the player. The official correctly throws his flag, and this player should serve a minimum penalty of at least 1 minute releasable.
All right. Everybody see that? Yeah.
In this clip, White is on offense.
He looks up, you know, he sees them, and then he also follows through. The other thing too is when you're down there, you know, you always hear guys calling out, you know, pick left, pick right, pick left, pick right. If a guy, you know, he's watching his player, and you got to kind of watch them, you know, and he you know runs him over and didn't know he was there, that's not a necessary roughness. It has to be, you know, in your judgment, he knew he was there. All right. So illegal conduct. The big one's unsportsmanlike conduct. Okay. Um, and remember, we talked about a ladder. So we have a kind of a behavior ladder. So the first step in that ladder is a warning. All right. Generally, the warnings are for a coach. Coach, stop. I've had enough. Coach, we're not going to change our mind. You know, and he keeps on going. The first tool in your ladder, as long as he's just yelling and screaming at you, he's not um, deriding you, he's not questioning your integrity, he's not using vulgar language. You know, it's going to be that conduct foul. Um, and then you're going to rise to a 1 minute unsportsmanlike conduct. If you've gotten to that point and the player or the coach doesn't understand what you're talking about, you're going to talk about ejection. All right. Generally, when we eject a player or a coach, we want that to be a crew decision. Okay. Never looks good when a referee kind of gets upset. He goes, "You're ejected." All right. Call the fouls, talk to your crew, and then come out and say, you know, the player is going to be ejected for that. Sometimes it's better for another member of the crew to come over and talk about the ejection. Okay, it takes the personal nature of it out of it. Fighting is an automatic ejection. Um, so anytime there's a punch thrown, that's going to be an ejection. Um, you know, and you know, sometimes you get guys kind of push and shove. That's not a punch. You might go with that. That could be unnecessary roughness. It could be unsportsmanlike conduct. Sometimes it could just be a warning, depending on the situation. But if they fight, it's an automatic ejection. All right. And the thing about fighting, you know, coaches will always try and defend their players and say, well, he didn't do this, or the other guy threw a punch first, or that wasn't really a punch. If you think it was a punch and you had a fight, when the fight's over, talk with your crew. If you think that guy threw a punch, eject him. We always look at the film later and make the decisions. It's really not a good look if we think a guy maybe threw a punch, we don't eject him, but we eject another player. You go back and look at the film and you find out, you know, that it was the other player should have also been ejected. The other thing with fighting is leaving the bench. So if a player leaves the bench to enter a fight or enter a fracas, that player is ejected. If an assistant coach leaves the bench, even if it's to get his own players and runs out on the field, that should be an ejection. Okay. Um, they can't leave the bench area. The only person allowed to come out and assist you with breaking up a fight is the head coach. So dealing with coaches' behavior, um, we use the ladder. I talked about the ladder. You never want to ignore the head coach to start. So the coach has a concern, a question. Often what'll set them off is they want to um, you know, they just want to know what happened, and they're unclear and they're confused and their team is confused. If you ignore them, you kind of escalate that. That's not a good thing. Okay. So initially you don't want to ignore the head coach. You only answer questions. Okay. Don't react to statements. All right. If the guy's very angry and he's yelling, you walk over to the coach. Do you have a question about what happened? Do you have a question about our call? Ask them to state it in that phrase. And that's a great way to de-escalate it. Coach, what's the problem here? What are you concerned about? Okay. I'll often follow that up with, I'll use terms like, Coach, from my perspective, this is what I saw. I try and be a little empathetic and understand they have a different perspective than I do, both visually and structurally. So as a referee, my job is to manage and maintain the game. For the coach, he's got a lot more emotion in it because his job is to get his players to do the right things to win the game. And when things go bad, sometimes that emotion gets confused. So you always want to kind of understand that and try and talk through. We always want to say, Coach, it's over. Okay. Coach, we're done. Coach, we're not going to discuss it anymore. Sometimes, you want to say, well, what I'll say sometimes, Coach, if you really have a big problem with it, you know, the association will take your film and look at your film and review it. Don't ever go to guy or say it in a way that's demeaning, or anything like that. And then lastly, you always want to be honest. If there was a call that was made and you're not 100% sure, or you think maybe I screwed that up a little bit, maybe I didn't get that right, you know, it's okay to say, Coach, I'm not really sure. I don't really know, you know, be honest. If you can correct the error, and we get to rule 7, we'll talk a little bit about correction of errors. We can correct some of our errors. We can't correct all of them, and we're going to make errors. So that's the other part of being honest. You're not going to get them 100%. All right. And just to go backwards for anybody that knows, D3 lacrosse, that's Coach Berkman at Salisbury. And if you ever want to really learn how to talk and work with a coach, learn how to talk and work with Coach Berkman. He can be difficult. All right. Player behavior. All right. We want to control the player-to-player interactions. Okay. Always be looking for issues, particularly after big hits, after something where play ended up down on the ground. You get a lot of talking. Get in there and control those interactions. You don't always have to throw a flag. You don't always have to, they're not always going to be penalties, but show the players that you're in control without screaming, without yelling. Just get in there. Hey, get back. I got it under control. Okay. Stop trash talking right away. All right. Um, there's a fine line between trash talking and taunting. But if you hear, they'll look at each other and say something, knock it off. I don't want to hear another word. If you hear another word, take the guy. If you don't know who it was, take them both. Okay. If there's foul language between teammates, it's very hard to control that because, again, these kids, have bad language. Coaches have bad language. I have a terrible problem with my language. Okay. Um, if it's teammate to teammate and it's getting loud, go to them and say, you got to stop. It's got to stay in the huddle. If it goes to opponents, that's got to be a foul. If it goes to you, it's got to be a big foul. Okay. Um, control that. The other thing with language is stuff having to do with race and gender. Has zero place in the game. If you hear it, you got to address it, and you can't address a racial slur or a gender slur with a warning. Okay, racial slurs generally go in the category of an ejection. Okay, the gender thing probably should a little bit, but um, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. But if you hear them go, you're a faggot or you're queer or you're this or that, or they go into their religion, all right, you have to address that with at least a penalty. All right. Um, team behavior. Um, captains can help diffuse situations. So at the beginning, when we do our pregame conference, make sure you have the captain's names. If you warn a player for their language, or even if you did it out loud, I always like to find hey, can you help me out here? This is going to get really bad, and I'm going to have to get very involved if you don't help me control this. And in most cases, the captains will help you. And then all warnings are team warnings. So when it comes to language, so if you're going to warn, if language is bad enough and you're going to warn, don't call number 10. I don't want to hear another word from you. Okay, language. I don't want to hear another F bomb from anybody, either team. I don't care. And all warnings have to be team warnings. Otherwise, you just give warnings all the time. All right. So the other personal fouls are illegal cross and equipment. All right. So there's certain specifications for a stick. When we do the on field, I'll go through everybody kind of what we're looking for with the stick. It's got to be a short stick is 40 to 42 inches. A long pole is up to 6 feet. Can't be any more than that. The ball has to freely move and come out. Can't have shooting strings more than 4 inches from the top of the stick. Those are the big ones. And if during a stick check they're found to be illegal, that's a penalty. Gloves must completely cover the hands. Uh, if they're just worn out, you do the equipment check and you see a worn out glove, tell them to go tape it up. If they've cut the fingers out, cut the palm out to give them better control of the stick, that's a penalty. 1 minute. It's dangerous. Mouthpieces are always technical fouls. And then certain illegal behavior. So one thing, and this actually happened apparently in the Delaware club game, Matt. So if on the face-off, the one of the face-off guys either grabs the stick, like physically reaches out and grabs the stick, or grabs the ball, that's a 1 minute unsportsmanlike penalty. And that was a result of a guy named Alex Smith, who was the face-off guy at the University of Delaware and one of the best. And later, as we got better with film and cameras, we found out that a lot of times he was grabbing the ball and throwing it between his legs. Penalty enforcement. I'm going to skip this because we're going to cover this in Rule 7. A little bit of preventive officiating. Talk to the captains. Tell the captains that sportsmanship is very important. My line to players in any sport I do is your players, I don't. The players that are going to react badly when they think something bad is happening to them. If you can get to them before I do, we're going to have a very good day. Tell captains it's always okay for them to ask questions in the right way. Tell them it's not okay to yell and scream and use profanity. And don't be afraid to communicate with the players. If you think a guy's on the edge of doing something wrong, he's got his hands on his back, he's not doing something right, tell them, warn them. It's okay. And if a player asks you, it's okay to explain what they did wrong. Okay. Be careful. You can kind of tell sometimes a kid doesn't want to hear what they did wrong because they're not going to believe you anyway. All right. But make sure if they ask for an explanation, give a quick explanation or tell them, hey, when we get to a quarter break or we have a little break in the action, come and talk to me and I'll help you through it. All right. And then beware of flashpoints. And I talked about this a little bit. So after a goal, anything that happens around a crease, it's big. Anytime you stop play, before you start the signal, before you start to adjudicate the foul, or do get your eyes up and make sure there's not anything continuing in the play. Then move on. Okay. Player movement. So between quarters, after goals, anything like that, where players are freely moving on the field, have your eyes up. All right. Too often we see referees sit there and they automatically get in a huddle or they start writing on their card. They're looking down. Next thing you know, you turn around, there's two guys rolling around on the ground. All right. Always be looking. When you can, watch substitutions. When there's a lot going on at the box, the trail should always kind of be watching it. And whenever you get a big hit, even if it's legal, watch. Okay. Look for any after action. Okay. Field momentum shifts. You can tell when the momentum in a game is about to shift, right? Um, and often those big momentum shifts, one team is doing very well, and they might say something they shouldn't, and the other team gets frustrated and they might hit somebody they shouldn't. Prevent the big, long, loose ball scrums. If the ball's on the ground for more than about 5, 6 seconds, get it up off the ground. At that point, that's where you find that push or that hold. The first 5 minutes a game always can be wild. We want to try to avoid throwing flags, and we want to try and have the game under control. But, teams come out super charged up. We just want to be very aware after big hits. When the crowd gets loud, you want to get your eyes up. And anything that happens in your lines, you have to be very aware of what's going on. So that's the end of that one. And that is the end of today. So I told you it would be a little bit longer because we missed last week. Again, we can go through these. You can read them in the book until you really see them and you get on the field and you start to get a feel for what is and what isn't a foul. It's going to take a while to understand. Rely on your partners. Okay. So the first few games you work, the first year, you're generally going to be working with senior guys. We don't usually put applicants together on a game. So, be asking that senior official, what they'd had, what they did, what they saw. We'll also be giving you a mentor. So you can always bounce things off that mentor. And remember, every situation you can always handle a little bit differently. You learn how to handle situations through things that happen. You kind of learn what works, what doesn't work. As you start to, if you do a lot of officiating in the same area, you get to learn the coaches, their personalities. You learn the guys that you say very little to, and you learn the guys you say a lot to. So that's it. Any questions? If anybody needs to stay on, I know somebody had a question. Oh, yeah. If
Yeah,
anybody's
that's
having a problem with the course, please make sure you get that course done. That's important. And the 7th, so the scrimmage day, I will be sending out a schedule very soon. You all will start on one field, and I'll have that field for you. And then, depending on how you do in the first half of the day, we may move you to some other fields with some other guys. But plan to be there from about 8 to about 3. And hopefully we'll feed you, but I can't promise. But I'll let you know before if we're going to be able to do it. Any questions? All right. Have a great day, and I will see you all next week.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks. See you next week.
Thanks, Greg.
Much.
Okay, Chris.
Yes.
I'm going to share my screen and my account with you real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Let me stop the PowerPoint share. Let me start a new share. All right, you can see my screen right now, right?
Yeah, I can see like the tabs and stuff.
Browser, right?
Yep.
All right. And my USA Lacrosse account.
Mm-hmm.
I am a human. I'm gonna log in. And my account. All right. So when you go in to this page, right?
Yeah, let me get in real quick to my side on my side. So yeah, I'm on the same page as you now.
Okay. So you want to go to my transcript.
Oh crap. So that's the thing right here. So I can do that. I have to go to my household because my mom has it set up because I was under her account from God knows how long ago. But I can get to that transcript thing under that my profile part. I just hit the little graduation icon, and then it goes with the course packages or the course packages or the enrolled courses. And it says I'm enrolled in all these courses, but they all are blue and I can't really open them.
All right. So let me see. So are you seeing this like course packages, enrolled courses?
Yeah, I see that just fine.
All right. So let me see. I have a lot of shit here. So up in the search, type rules. See what happens.
Yeah, it says no records found for me as well.
Yeah. Okay. Let me find it. Boys officials rules. In the game involved, what do you have in the game involvement?
Game involvement?
Yeah. See, mine says official in blue.
Yeah, mine says official and player as well.
Okay. Um, so just try typing in boys officials.
All right, I got some stuff up.
All right. And then if you use like if you use the little radio buttons at the bottom, do you come to boys officials? Shit, this could be easier. How about boys official rules? Why is that? It's crazy. Other people have found it though.
So
Let's go
I
back
have
to,
found
well,
it.
go to course packages.
I'm under that.
Yeah. So if you go to boys officials, make your page size 25. You see where I did that?
Yeah, I just did that now, and none of my. Oh shoot! Now I can buy these courses except the boys' annual certification.
So go there. Go to boys annual certification. Go to the eyeball.
Yeah, I can hit the eyeball and everything.
And then when you open that eyeball,
Mm-hmm.
Do you see boys officials rules and penalties course?
I see that, yeah, but I can't access it. That's the thing. Like
Right.
you can click it and launch the course. I can't. It's just a blue and I can only highlight it.
Okay. What I'm going to suggest to you, let me see.
Mhm.
Back. Um, oh, that's not it. Because I think you're right. I think it's something in, your older membership.
And the problem is I can't like use my own email and stuff to create one because it's still like all of my information is still the same, even when my mom made it all those years ago.
Yeah, I'm trying to find, there used to be, view this issue, support. So I would call. So if you go to support, it gives you a phone number, and they do have somebody, Monday to Friday
Mm-hmm.
at this phone number and member service. You could also email your number to this, to this email address
Okay.
and tell them what problem you're having.
Okay.
You could probably do that tonight. So and even take a screenshot, show them you can find it,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't, it's not letting you open the course and take the course
Yeah.
and see what's up with that. Take screenshots and explain it fully.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't hear anything by tomorrow night, text me and I'm trying to get to my contact and figure out what's going on.
Okay. Yep.
But that,
I didn't know if you had to like invite me to take the course or something.
no, I shouldn't have to. Let me look one other place real quick.
But I also remember you saying there was like an exam through Dragonfly or Arbiter. I can't remember which
Well,
one.
so the exam I'm going to want you to take is uh, the one that's through here.
Yeah.
Uh, let me see, user management. Oh, yeah. No. I remember. Hello there. Where's the thing? This thing is, they've completely redone this. I'm trying to find out where I add people. Filter options. Manage membership. A plus. Chris, what is your email?
My email.
Yeah.
So it's going to be under my mom's email, which is the unfortunate thing for this. So my email is chrisgold707@gmail.com, but my mom's is going to be bethallen8@gmail.com.
Say that again, a little slower.
Try Beth.
Let me see one thing. Chris, what's
Gold.
yeah. Because you said you couldn't start one with your email address.
Yeah.
Chris
Because it
Gold.
said 707@gmail.com.
I would also, when you email them, tell
Mhm.
them you're not able to get an account under that email address because you should, as an adult, you should get separated from your moms.
Yeah, I also did the whole age verification thing because
Yeah.
it said something about having to be like 22 to be able to do that. And I never verified my ID. I did that last week when I was texting you.
Right. Yeah, definitely email them. Tell them like what email address your membership's under. You've tried to get it under this email address. It's not letting you, and
Mhm.
you're not able to access the rules and penalties course.
Okay.
All right, boss. And
Yep.
then let me know, if you don't hear back from them by tomorrow night, let me know.
Yeah. I mean, we got pelted with snow up here. So
Yeah.
that's the only thing I'm going to be concerned about with them responding back to me if they had to go
Right.
offline for the day.
Yeah. Well, let's see if everything's closed, we'll do it on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll get to it. But I think it's wrapped up somewhere in there. There's probably a button they have to push or something that they'll fix.
Okay. Yeah, I'll get it emailed to them tonight, and then I'll let you know either tomorrow night or Tuesday night if they've never responded to me.
Yep.
All right, sounds good. I will see you next week, and hopefully I'll get this course done by then.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep.
Now we'll be all right. You know the game, so when you take it, it'll be good because it'll kind of be a review. So, but we'll get it straight.
Yeah.
All right,
I
Chris.
just want to get all the licensing stuff taken care of,
Yep.
So,
Yeah, we want to get you done and get you in games. So,
so I will I'll see you next week.
all right, Chris. Have a great night, bud.
You too.
Hey, so can we get it hotter in here? It's 62.
Yeah, give me a second.
Freezing, but I know I was sitting upstairs.